Good to see some of you who we haven't seen in a while due to the holidays. I hope that you all had a great Thanksgiving with your family and friends, and well, just whoever it is that you decided to share the holiday with. We're going to be going to Ephesians 2 this morning. I'm not quite in the Christmas mode as of yet, to be honest with you. We started way too soon. Like I said, I think a couple weeks ago, it seems like earlier and earlier we get bombarded in the stores, which should show you just how commercialized Christmas has become, you know. But it seems like after Valentine's Day, we're right into the Christmas mode, and that is like way too early, right? So here we are. I'm not going to be preaching a Christmas message per se. I mean, for us, all messages somewhere down the line deal with Christ. And so because of that, all messages have something to do with the gift in which has been given for us and that Jesus died in our place. But what we're going to talk about this morning is really a lot about what Brother Chuck had brought this morning in his lesson. Matter of fact, I was thinking this morning as I was going over it, and the question that came to my mind was, should we be a little bit more lenient upon the hypocrite? I mean, let's face it, hypocrisy is an easy thing to fall into. It's not like a difficult thing to want people to think highly of you or in the thing in which you are doing. If you were to give a large sum of money to the church, you might would want people to know that, hey, I gave this to the church. It wouldn't be the right thing to do, but I'm just saying, should we maybe in our minds and our hearts just be a little bit more lenient upon the hypocrite due to the fact that we probably all are guilty of hypocrisy somewhere down the line, wherever that might fall, you know, because there's a long list of things when he begins the woes that you could say, woe is me, due to the fact that those woes are easy to fall into. I think about the hypocrite who stood in the temple, and he probably was in the middle of the temple, praying unto the Lord for everybody to be able to hear what he had to say in his prayer, how eloquent it was that he offered up to the Lord these words, while the sinner was over in the corner on his knees, bowed down, praying unto God to have mercy upon me. Right? It'd be easy to be that guy in the middle. And it's a little bit more difficult for us as human beings to be that guy in the corner. You know, to be humble in our approach to God rather than try to become something that we actually aren't. And so we're going to look at a little bit, but it's going to be a whole different way of seeing it this morning. The title being, Then Came Mercy, out of Ephesians 2, verse 1. It says, And you hath he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins, wherein in time past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past, in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others. Dead in trespasses and sins. When we begin to take a look at what this means spiritually, and that's how you actually have to begin to look at it, what we understand is each and every one of us were born into this world with a nature that is dead already, spiritually speaking. We might see a person who's walking around and who is talking, who is enjoying life, but without Jesus in our lives, we are right there, dead in trespasses and sins. Romans 5 verse 12 says this, it says, Wherefore as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. It is a foregone conclusion that each and every one of us are already in a terrible state. When born into this world, we are born as sinners. with the nature of sin, a nature which has been passed down to us from one generation to the next. Nobody who's ever walked upon the face of this earth, save Jesus Christ himself, could lay claim to not having been born in sin. We are all sinners by birth, by nature. And it just continues to pass on, one down to the next. I mean, all you have to do is watch little kids, and in the moment of time that you tell them not to do something, that they automatically are full force into doing that. I was watching Daniela. It's been a while since I got to see her do this. But she was running up here, and her mom was saying, "Daniela, now walk. Daniela, now walk." And she would look at her, and then she'd run. She'd look at her again. "Daniela, now walk." She'd run again. And she turned. She wanted to see that what she was doing was being noticed, but what she was doing was wrong. But see, that's the thing. When it comes down to sin in and of itself, we can take into perspective and bring it into our own minds. Yes, we are sinners. And my particular sin, as far as the trespass goes, might be different than yours. But it is still labeled sin in and of itself. We are born with that nature. As Paul writes to the Ephesians, he's writing to them in some respects to those who have just been converted, and telling them that they should not gloat in who they are, because in all reality, where we come from is all the same. There is nobody who could claim anything different. We are all sinners. There is probably no more, proof of man's depravity than what we can see right here in this place. That our nature is already in a position of being sinful, leaning towards sinful actions, thinking sinful thoughts, using sinful words to express how we feel about any given situation. That we are prone to this, and it seems the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, and the less you feel guilty about it. It's something that you grow accustomed to, and we are all in this sense guilty. And even if we're not guilty of doing the act ourselves, we're guilty of probably judging the person who is. You understand what I'm saying? That one end of the other, we find ourselves in a position of being guilty of the sinful action, which is the trespass of our sin. And I want to read you something that was written by Albert Barnes. It's a little bit lengthy, but I think it kind of brings to reality for us what condition we're really in, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the condition itself. And our sinful condition, if we were to look at it, what does he say? We were dead in trespasses and sins. And he also goes on to say in Romans, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. So death automatically is the product of the sin in which is part of our nature, but also then becomes part of our action, what we do. And so this is what he wrote. He says, "A corpse is insensible. It sees not, and hears not, and feels not. The sound of music and the voice of friendship and of alarm do not arouse it. The rose and the lily breathe forth their fragrance around it, but the corpse perceives it not. The world is busy and active around it, but it is unconscious of it all. It sees no beauty in the landscape, hears not the voice of a friend, looks not upon the glorious sun and stars, and is unaffected by the running stream and rolling ocean. So with the sinner in regard to spiritual and eternal world." All that is beautiful, all that is wonderful, all that is glorious, is around us. But those who are dead don't sense it. None of it. As a matter of fact, I think we probably all have known people who aren't happy if everybody else is happy. They're just not happy. There's no joy. They don't enjoy things. And the moment in time in which they start to feel a little bit of happiness, they have to revert back to their unhappy condition once again, over and over and over again, because that's what they're comfortable with. Why is it that the drug addict becomes a drug addict, or the alcoholic become an alcoholic? Why is it that we return back to the filth in which we once were brought out of? Because that's what happens. Is that I think it's James. It's James or Peter who talks about the dog returning back to his own vomit. And if you'll watch a dog, he'll do it. You know, and we got two dogs, and if one dog don't get it, the other one will. You know, it may not be his vomit, it may be the other dog's vomit, but he goes to it. I'm just saying, why is it that we as human beings have this sense about us that we have to find unhappiness to be pleased? You know, find the negative in order to feel positive. Why is it that becomes the case in which we have in our lives? And it all boils down to what it is that the apostle is saying unto the church at Ephesus here in this place. And that is, we were dead in trespasses and sins. See, if sin is the thing that causes death, you know, if sin is not only our doing wrong, but our not doing right, if that's sin, then the way that it comes out of our lives is the trespass itself, the thing in which we do. You know, if sin is anger, let's put it that way, if to be angry is to sin, then the way that anger comes out is the trespass. That's where we're at. See, the two linked together is what the apostle begins to speak of. And as he begins to speak of it, he lets them know that it's in this condition that they find themselves in a sense of death, spiritually. We walked in it. You know, our journey upon the earth is so often compared to running, like in a race or something like that. Like we have a starting point and we have an ending point, and that's true for all of us. We are born into the world. We take our first breath, but then we move always in a direction to where we will eventually take our last breath. And it's what happens in between the two that matters. He says unto them here in this place, he says, you walked in accordance to the world. And the world, in and of itself, the word itself in the Greek means age. And I think a lot about that because, you know, growing up, Michelle and I talk about this a lot because when we were growing up, we were also channel changers. That was like our job. Don't sit too close to the TV, you're going to go blind. But I need you to sit close enough to turn the channel when I want you to turn the channel. That seemed like an oxymoron right there. So here we are sitting by the TV, and one of the things, my dad loved Westerns. I mean, he couldn't get enough of Westerns. Didn't matter who it would be. But you could always identify in a Western who was the good guy and who was the bad guy, right? It was always the guy with the white hat was the good guy, the guy with the black hat, he was the bad guy. Today, you can't tell the difference. In the age in which we live today, the black hat guy is liable to be the good guy, and the white hat might be the bad guy. You don't know. And I think that speaks to the age in which we ourselves find ourselves living in. is that it becomes harder and harder and harder to know what is right and what is wrong based upon the way that the world is going. That you could sit back all you want and talk about how bad it is for the rich and the way that the rich, deal with life in and of itself. And I don't want to go too far into saying certain things because I don't want you to miss the point. But you cannot be elected into an office if you do not have money. Is that right? And so, does the rich man who sits in the office, who has been given the power to do for us what needs to be done, does he really look to our best interests if we are poor? No. He will always look to the best interest for those who are rich because he himself is. And that's the course of the world in which we live. I am not necessarily saying that every rich person is out to mess with your life. I'm just saying if it comes down to it, who is the rich man going to look to help? He's going to try to help the rich man because that's what he is. And so, but that wasn't the way Jesus was when Jesus came. Right? That he came to heal those who were sick. Is it a person who is already whole? Does he need a physician? No, Jesus would say. But those that are sick need a physician. It is always those who have a need was the one that he was trying to help in the age in which we live. We see things. If Jesus lived during the time that we now live today, what would be the differences in his approach? Would there be any difference, or would it still be the same as it is today? Is it to those who have will have more, and those who have not will have even less? What would be the difference in the times in which we live if Jesus walked upon the face of the earth today? One thing for sure is that which is behind that which is evil, that which is bad, that which is sinful, that which is a trespass. That which is behind that is always the same. According to the prince and the power of the air. We find in the book of Ephesians 6, chapter and verse 12, where the scripture says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against the spiritual wickedness in high places." There can be no doubt, really, that who Paul was talking about. I've gone to many different meetings where this verse in itself would be a topic in which would be brought up. And I've heard things such as, wickedness in high places was the pulpit. And I thought, that doesn't make sense to me. And what's not that there's some bad stuff that come out of the pulpits, but what I'm saying is in reference to what Paul is talking about throughout the line of Ephesians 6 chapter, he's talking about Satan himself. That we wrestle, and demon spirits, you wonder, because there was a day, obviously, when Jesus walked the face of this earth that demon possession was why? It was rampant. It was like demon spirits today might be. We might look at the person who's a drug addict, right, and say, he's got a bad spirit. But what I'm really talking about is what is behind the evil and the sinfulness of the world in which we are presently a part of, and the fact of demon spirits being around is a reality in which the scriptures talk about. I often wondered, is there a certain location in the world in which is more prevalent to be being demon we'll see in the demon activity. And I don't know that there is. All I know is that the activity is for real. The influence in which it has in the world in which we live is real. We're not moving in a direction of getting better. We're always moving in a direction of getting worse. And so the activity, I believe, is literally always there. And it's why I think that we see so many people who go from being, happy to angry to and erratic and everything. It goes from one place to the next place, and it seems, how in the world do we get from here to way over to here so quickly? We still have rulers in high places who in an instant could go to war. What I'm saying to you this morning is that the activity of sinfulness and such and trespasses, they haven't lessened. They've just gotten worse. The problem is I think we've become blind to it. I was thinking again this morning about all the different things that happen in the world, such as earthquakes and famines. And we know that the Bible tells us that these things will escalate the closer that we get to the time of Jesus' return. And we've made statements, and I've made statements from here about the fact that how that earthquakes in California, we've grown accustomed to them. In different parts of the world, it may be, wow, an earthquake. But for us, it's like, it's a roller coaster ride. Here's my dollar, let me take the next one too. And we've just grown accustomed to it. Earthquakes. Yet at the same time, these things which take place are something that we look at today, even in the scriptures in which we're talking about, where it talks about being the children of wrath. That we are born with the nature of sin, which leads us to acting out in trespasses against God, realizing and acknowledging the fact that these things will one day have to stand before the judgment of God. And if we look over to Romans, the 1st chapter, and we begin to open up the pages that are written there, and he talks about how it is that people have lived their lives so long ignoring the fact of the way in which they live before an almighty God. And nature itself, the way in which it shows forth the judgment of God, that's where the earthquakes come in. That's where the tidal waves hit, the hurricanes, all these things. We've lessened them down to being nothing more than just things that happen. Right? That the world is at unrest, and so we have earthquakes. It just becomes something that is normal and natural, and we write it off as being something that will just happen, without taking into respect that there is a God who created this whole thing, who we are living much of our life against. And when things happen, rather than take stock with inside of ourselves and saying, I'm a sinner. And I've lived my life against God. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? Things happen alike. But the truth is sometimes we forget that there's a God who's in charge of it all. And we're moving in a direction where one day we will all see Him. Jesus told His disciples in John the 14th chapter, in verse 30, He says, "Hereafter I will not talk much with you, for the prince of this world cometh, and hath nothing in me." And really what it means is that he has nothing against me. He has nothing to put to my charge. There's no evil that he could find within sight of me, that he could hold against me. The thing is we could not say the same. He talks about their manner of living, and how that their manner of living was simply nothing more than to feed the flesh, to gratify the flesh, to appease the flesh, to live in accordance to the will and the mind of the flesh. We were by nature, by birth, children of wrath. See, we are born sinful. We are born as trespassers. Therefore, we are born as children of wrath. The wrath of God is displayed in a world that has grown contrary to Him, that has decided that what is good is now bad, and what is bad is now good. And when we start seeing things happen, even to this point, we're not that far away from COVID, right? I mean, we still have lingering, and people are still taking shots for the next COVID that's come down the line. We look at that and we identify a people from where it may have come from. Okay, our president, our ex-president, he definitely went that route in finding where it came from. Because if we could identify where it came from, maybe we could deal with it. But where it came from was not necessarily the laboratory in which it was developed, but from the evil heart that created it. When you start talking about germ warfare and things like that, then you realize that we live in a world that has really gone somewhat nuts. Some scientist in his laboratory creating a thing that, and what I have heard is to stop the explosion of people being born into the world. You know what I'm saying? It's about population control. You could believe that. You don't have to believe that. I personally could see it. Of course, then I remember watching Boris and Natasha on TV when I was growing up. So that might be my leaning toward craziness right there. Probably sitting too close to the TV was my problem. All I'm saying to you is when you're living in a world of sin, and it is ran by sinful people, what do you think you're going to get at as a product of all that other than sinful things? And so, by that, we might be able then to say we are children of wrath, that we were born to experience nothing more than trouble. And this we have as given unto us by our fathers before us. But then came mercy. See, this is, to me, when I study this, it's such a different thing for me, because the evil, the ugly, all that is before us and is easily seen, is where I'm gonna hang everything else on. But understand that here's God as He sits upon His throne, that what would have been the easiest thing for Him to do was to destroy it all. Remembering in the days of Noah, how that the whole world was, the thought processes that was upon their minds and on their hearts was on evil continually. And God said, I've had enough. And basically really started over with Noah and his family. Remember in the days of Moses, when Moses pleaded before God and said, God, don't destroy these people, even though that was on God's heart. He was ready to get rid of these people because of their obstinacy and their disobedience. But Moses pleaded for the children of Israel and said, you know, if you destroy these people, then what are all the other people going to think? That you just brought these people out of bondage to destroy them? So because of Moses interceding on behalf of the children of Israel, God continued on with them. There's coming a day when it'll all be over, when God will say, enough. Aren't you glad that the end of the story really is about the mercy of God? But God, who is rich in mercy for his great love wherewith he loved us, even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Christ. By grace you're saved. The end of the story isn't about my sinful condition. That in many ways I followed down a pathway of sinfulness in my life, doing things that I ought not to do, and forgetting to do those things that I ought to do. That it isn't my sin that defines me, but it is God who is rich in mercy. God who loved me so much that he gave his only begotten Son to die in my place. That through him I have found salvation. Through him I have been redeemed. Through him that there is a value within inside of my life. Yes, I was born in sin. And yes, I have lived many of my days trying to satisfy that sin. But God, who is rich in mercy, because of the great love wherewith he loved me, by grace I am saved. This morning, don't let your sin define you. Don't let it mark you as who you are. Let God define you. Accept the grace that God has offered unto you and receive the mercy that he has for your life. Stand in his presence redeemed. Stand in his presence today, knowing that if you were to leave this world, you would go to be in the presence with God in heaven. Don't let sin be the last chapter. It is our first chapter, but don't let it be our last. Let God have your heart. Accept Jesus today while you have the opportunity. Let's go to the Lord in a word of prayer.
What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful, who with all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness.